Simon Jordan, you are sitting comfortably. Tell me what you know. I think you know a wee bit more than most people regards this John Textor situation at Crystal Palace. Just to refresh everybody's minds about it, he's under pressure to sell his shares. As for why?
Well, there's this issue around decisive control of two football clubs, isn't there? And the fact that Palace qualified for the Europa League through winning the FA Cup, to some people would have been a surprise. Maybe it wasn't to Parish, maybe it was engineered, who knows, in terms of outcomes. And his other team, Lyon, or one of his other sides, so there was this challenge, and potentially the media were reporting, I think Mike Keegan carried a story that the UEFA were going to kick them out. Palace made representations. Textor is absolutely unequivocal in his position, because I had a long conversation with John about 10 days ago, that he doesn't have decisive control. We've spoken about this before in other situations where Parish has engineered a situation somehow or another. He has decisive control. And you've seen that, you saw that previously when there was this argument about loans between football clubs, and the Premier League put forward a motion about clubs that are multi-owned being able to loan players between one another, and the Premier League voted against it. Texas didn't want that vote. Parish did, and voted in favour of the loans being abolished. So you already know that the decisive control influence wasn't really there. And so they made representations to UEFA which were being considered. In the meantime, Textor has decided to sell his shares.
And has managed to do it.
And has taken a haircut to do it.
Oh, really?
Taken a significant haircut.
What are we talking about? 200 million?
200 million euros is what is being reported. I think he made an offer for the club, the whole club, for a lot more than that was worth.
Right.
And from his point of view, I think he has some rancour there. But notwithstanding that, he's going to sell his shareholding, and Palace then will remove any doubt. I actually think they would have found their way through it either way. But I think by selling his shareholding, and it looks like it's going to be to Woody Johnson,
owner of the New York Jets,
then he clears up any concerns, and Crystal Palace go forward.
So UEFA were concerned about this decisive control.
Yeah.
And what does that actually mean then?
It means having not undue influence, having controlling influence over two football clubs that are competing inside the same tournament. So having decisive control means that you have the control over one particular entity, or have control over two entities in this instance. So what they were arguing about is, well, this is a sporting integrity issue, which seems to me to be nonsense in the first place. If you're going to allow people to have multi-club ownerships, one of the benefits of multi-club ownerships is you share information, you share players, you do all the stuff that you should be doing if you want multi-club. And then they turn around and say, well, actually, if you do that, we can't have you competing in the same tournaments. Of course, if you had multi-club ownership on different continents, you'd never clash, besides this World Cup Championship which has come up. So it seems to be a ridiculous situation anyway, but as a result of the circumstances, and I suspect not just the circumstances, I suspect there's more to it. I know there's more to it, but that's not for me to say, it's for John to say.
Sure.
Sorry, just on this point, 43% would suggest that he has got more than a decisive influence.
Yeah, but you will be conversant, because you're quite a studied man, and how boards are weighted, and so you can have voting rights inside a board that determine that you might have far less shares in the business, but your voting rights are different.
All right. I was absolutely convinced, I don't know why, that UEFA would that Crystal Palace would find a way, and UEFA would acquiesce. There's no question.
So did I.
Yeah, absolutely did. So no. But they didn't acquiesce when Drogheda United, let us show us that we're really, really strong. Let's do Drogheda United in for qualifying for the Conference League, and the owner actually has shares or owns Silkeborg in Denmark. It's an absolute joke.
Really?
It is a joke.
There's a similarity there, man.
There's a similarity there. Simon's just mentioned that Textor is selling his shares. It might not have sold them just as we speak. There might be a deal to do that there, but it's not actually, hasn't actually done them at this minute.
Right.
And because they changed the timing of the information that was supposed to be given, and the Football Association of Ireland didn't actually hand that information on to the football clubs, but it's a Drogheda who are playing above themselves like you wouldn't believe. They have a fantastic young manager in Doherty, really, really great, and yet they can suffer now qualifying for the Conference League. It's not as if to say they're going to win it or anything like this year.
No, sure.
Giving them a chance to get into it.
But the whole principle of creating blind trust is quite laughable, because Marinakis did it at Forest, right, and believed he'd got around it, but he didn't actually do it. The deadline was March the 1st. He didn't do it until April. So Forest would have got caught by certain things as well. But the irony of it is if you put your shares into a blind trust and remove yourself from perceived decisive control, who is the fund of Nottingham Forest? Marinakis.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So if they're going to come to for some money because they don't have the working cash flow themselves, who are they going to go to?
Yeah.
Marinakis. So with due respect, normally the thing that decides control is the money. That decides the direction of travel, decides the influence, because the money directs where people are going. So it's a ridiculous facade. It's just about optics and creating a either ban it or don't ban it.
Well, I was going to ask you that. Is that the direction we're going in? It seems to be more prudent to get down round the table and say, look, let's just do away with this.
Yeah.
Multi-club ownership is. Let's get rid of it.
But the reasons why you can't is because there's so many sophisticated ownership models now that are coming into sport and challenging the orthodoxy of what the football world thinks it can enforce upon people. And you're seeing this all the time. You see with Man City arguing about associated party transactions and saying, hang on, your little football orthodoxy, it doesn't stand up to the law of the land.
Yeah.
So when you've got all these hybrid owners that are either nation states, hedge funds or billionaires, they go, hang on you. I'm not putting up with your nonsense. I mean, I, as a younger man, the first thing I did when I walked into Palace was go to the Football League and take him to court over a player registration. Craig Foster said, you can't make me pay his wages. He's an Australian. He hasn't got a work permit. You can't break the law of the land and make me pay his salary because he's not allowed to work in this country.
Yeah.
So that was me. Now go forward to billionaires with huge armies of lawyers. They go, I'm not having this. And that's why multi-club ownership exists. So surely it shouldn't be on the wit of the football authorities to go, okay, if this model is going to be utilised, and it has advantages because we can circulate players around the world and we can keep the circularity of transactions going, how do we remove the issues that we seem to think exists about sporting integrity? We seem to believe, whether it's right or wrong, that an owner of two football clubs will give the nod to one football club to lose a match in favour of another. Now, that might be right, but surely, for God's sakes, we can put people on a moon, right? Then we can find a way to sophisticate the thinking that enables billionaires and hedge funds and multi-club ownership to actually function without this cobblers.
What baffles me, though, is, correct me if I'm wrong, Simon, what's it all about? Why do some owners want to have shares in other clubs? Why are they not just content with owning one club?
Yeah.
Because if you look at
is it a bit of a joust that goes on between new owners?
Look at John Textor's ownership model, Eagle Holdings, and look at the clubs that they own. By the way, he thought they were going to get smashed by PSG, and they didn't, did they? Botafogo.
I know. I saw him running at the stadium.
And so you look at this ownership model, and you look at the fact he's listing, doing an IPO on the New York Stock Exchange, and sports ownership models with media rights attached to it around the world have inherent value. So he's got Botafogo, he's got Lyon, he's got another ownership model, and he's got Palace. And that's what I was saying to him. Eagle Holdings in your world could be perceived as being a fantastic thing, because the first thing that Palace have done with your investment is go and win something in the FA Cup and also go into Europe. So actually you could parlay this into something really quite significant by saying, look what happens when Eagle Holdings invest in something. That's the holding business that he has. So there's a whole raft of why do FSG have a whole raft of investments? Why did Redbird buy a proportion of Liverpool for hundreds of millions of pounds? Because media rights and parlaying them into listed securities has huge value. If you go and buy 100 million worth of media rights, drop it into a shell and get 15 times earnings on the stock market, you've bought a business for 100 million quid that's now worth 1.5 billion. That's how it works.
If you were in the ownership game now, Simon, would you be a multi-club owner?
Well, yeah, I was at one point, because I looked at buying the Auckland Kings, I looked at buying Malaga, and I set up Crystal Palace USA, albeit under the hive of the same company. But there was always this thought process in my mind about utilising other marketplaces. In America, it was, let's get our young kids out there, Lewis Grabham, your mate, let's send him out to America, see if he can play in America during the pre-season when we're not doing anything. He can get some grown-up football. He didn't want to go. But the idea was to get the talent pools from other countries, as well as getting your other players out and get some circularity in what you're doing. So there's lots of good reasons behind it. And of course, with people like the City Group, they bought Man City for influence. We all know this, soft influence. So soft influence doesn't just stay in one country, does it? So you buy and set up a sporting business around the globe. And you become the biggest sporting business on the globe in the biggest sport. That's the reasons why.
What it is, Martin, is certainty, isn't it, for Oliver Glasner? The manager wants certainty. So Textor's selling his shares, and now any dubiety about whether or not Palace are going to be in the Europa League next season is overcome.
But I think that, as Simon mentioned, I think that they would have found a way around it, or UEFA wouldn't have been strong enough. It really wouldn't have been strong enough to send Crystal Palace down. They were strong enough to send Drogheda down. That was that was a major decision.
I know.
I have, absolutely. And Simon, I think you should pick up the cudgels and go with Drogheda United. You've got plenty of influence there. You influenced Textor into selling his shares at the time. Go for it.
He made his own decision. The biggest...
I'm going to jump in here. To be fair to you, you had the good grace to show me a message from Textor, and he's extremely grateful for the information that you gave and the advice gift you gave him.
Yeah, and our mutual dislike of Parish. But the bigger certainty that Oliver Glasner wants, I can guarantee you this, is how much money he's going to be given to support him in his endeavours.
Jim White and Simon Jordan. Monday to Friday mornings from 10 on AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.